very much, Professor. Thank you, Excellency, for your speech. Also, it's my first day in Tomsk, so I'm a foreigner totally. I live in Paris, far away, and I'm impressed by the audience. I'm impressed by the new building, and I'm impressed by your projects. So I wish you all the best to continue to develop the school and to promote it globally. I know that you come from different countries and regions, so your task will be to help me, because the topic is very difficult. And we look at Eurasia not from the Russian point of view, not from the French point of view, but from the Chinese point of view. Okay? And we'll see that there is an interesting combination of global strategy of China, moving west, and Russia-Eurasian strategy, and the two combined in interesting joint projects. And so I look at some joint projects in Central Asia, Kazakhstan, because I know better, some joint projects in Russia, of Paris and London. We are at the end of the process, okay? So this is our agenda. I'll start with China's what I call globalization strategy, which is not new. We look at different Chinese, Kazakh, Chinese, Russian, Chinese, Central Europe projects, and then we'll wonder how to manage these complex projects. Big projects, a lot of money, a lot of complexity, and at least multiple nationalities and interests. So it's a lecture about international strategy, but with a special topic coming from this initiative of China to start investing massively abroad, including in our region. I would like to comment a few dates about this globalization process of China. We are in 1979. China wants to change the system from planned economy regime to market economy, and to do it step by step. But from the beginning, at this moment, they decide to open the door to invite foreign companies to enter China. Not to make foreigners happy, but to learn and absorb foreign technology. So this was the first step of globalization strategy. Second step, 1999, Chinese government says, go global. I never heard go global by French government, German government, Russian government. Chinese said, go global and we'll support you, we'll help you in financing, giving advice, helping in negotiation. So it was a mandate to Chinese firms, especially big one, including state-owned one, go abroad. And on this date, 1999, is not too far from 2001, which is important for China, its entry into the WTO. You remember that Russia entered WTO 10 years after. So we could say that the Chinese were more tempted by international venture than the Russians at that time. Last not least, 2013, China decided to create a new concept, which is called the Belt and Road Initiative, or New Silk Road, which I will comment later. This has been published last year. Chinese plan includes this idea of full integration into the world chain of industry, value of logistics, and further opening up. Opening up, open door, go global. So it it means 30 years of effort to internationalize very quickly the country. The most recent initiative, called the Belt and Road, was announced in 2013 precisely in Kazakhstan, in Almaty, with President Nazarbayev. So it's not neutral to make, they could make the announcement in Shanghai, in Singapore, no. They have chosen Astana or Almaty, I'm not sure, to make the announcement. It means that Central Asia, in the minds of Chinese leaders, was a key element of the new Silk Road. Why they call it Belt and Road? Because there is a road, which is the Maritime Road. To go to France by the Maritime Road, you have to go all along the coast, to cross the Suez Canal, to go in the Mediterranean Sea, to go to Marseille, and then to Paris. This is Maritime Silk Road. What is the belt? The Silk Road economic belt in Chinese formulation is the road crossing Eurasia, one of the roads. There are many ways, long road, to go from east to west, and we'll see that this Chinese Belt and Road idea is more a concept than a real road. There are many roads, but one powerful concept. The key words in the formulation of Chinese government are the following: connectivity, including transport connectivity; free trade. You know that US President Trump is against free trade. He's more protectionist. The Chinese say, no, we want to open the door. Free trade. Financial integration. If we cooperate between China and Russia, should we use the US dollar? Why? We can use the ruble or the Chinese renminbi. Financial integration. And to do this, to facilitate this transport and this trade between East and West, we, the Chinese, are ready to invest money on the table in different industries, especially in energy. So you see that Central Asia, Russia, Eastern Europe are important for all these elements. In fact, my conference will be a journey. We'll travel from east to west, and I will show you some examples of this cooperation. There are many maps of Silk Road. This is the map of the real spots that are currently financed by China. So for sure, they do something there. As I am French, I said the Maritime Road goes to Marseille. But if I was African, I would say Maritime Road goes to Kenya, or goes to the port of to Iran. And if I live in the middle, we see that we have many roads. Some of them through Russia, Belarus, Baltic region. Some of them crossing Central Asia, going to Turkey, and going to Europe. Why China is looking west? because the success of China is partly made of a very large flow of trade with Europe. China and Europe are the two largest trading blocks. So to develop this cooperation, you need also to facilitate the connection in terms of financing, transportation, regulation, management. This is the idea. The consequence of Chinese project about maritime Silk Road is that we need more and more big ships, container ships. This is the king size one. And bigger ports to accommodate these ships. And we see here that among the top 10 container ports in the world, 7 are Chinese. So trade of China, the main orientation is shipping and maritime road. For the moment, inland road, train, is less developed. So there is a connection between developing the maritime Silk Road and building large ports along the way, and developing quickly successful leaders for China in the shipping industry. I suspect that at the end of the year, a company called COSCO will be #1 shipping company worldwide for containers. I'm not sure where the two blue lines are crossing, but maybe not far from you. Which means that there might be a northern belt and a southern belt. But we see also that this is again China vision. China is also exploring many approaches, including this red line to Turkey and this red line to Pakistan. If I had to sum up all my conference in one word, I would say Chinese ambition plus Russian-China agreement on some topics are changing the geography of Eurasia. I want to get closer from Paris. So I will take the train from, where do I start? From Chongqing, you know, big, very big, immense, 35 million inhabitants city in western China. It's not my topic today, but the Silk Road project is also a blessing for Western China. I start from Chongqing. I want to go to Duisburg in Germany, which is a big logistic hub. If I'm in Duisburg, I can go everywhere. London, Stockholm, Paris. 14 days. A French company is working today in Kazakhstan to save days in crossing Kazakhstan. The company, forgot the name, Alstom. New electric locomotives to make this journey less than 10 days. So you see, the train is in competition with the ships, the two roads. And it's one way. Another important element in Chinese thinking is the following. Maybe ships and ports is one thing and train another, but ultimately we want intermodality, intermodal connectivity. Why we like this place of Duisburg? because it's 50 kilometers away from Hamburg, the largest port of this part of Europe. If I build the railways from China to Kazakhstan, I want to connect the port on the railways. So always the same idea, connectivity, connectivity. So I start my journey in different regions, and I start with Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is a big country, small population, very rich. I would say the only natural weakness of Kazakhstan is to be a landlocked country. You are far from the maritime roads. So if you are a Kazakh leader, you are very interested by Chinese project, which can help developing trade between Kazakhstan and Western Europe and Asia. And you will see that the trade of Kazakhstan will change thanks to this type of investment in infrastructure. To operate in Kazakhstan also for a Chinese company is to operate in the Eurasian Economic Union. So what I produce in Kazakhstan, I can sell to Tomsk Oblast without legal problem or taxes. We speak of connectivity of transport, but also it's connectivity in energy. It's also digital connectivity. This is the pipeline crossing Kazakhstan from the Caspian Sea to China, crossing in a place that we call Korgos or Korgas, Alatai Pass. There are many names according to your nationality, but in a sense it's a very long journey for this oil. Kazakhstan and Russia are rich of oil. China has not enough oil and gas. So China is looking for oil and gas from Kazakhstan, from Russia, from everywhere. If it is a 50-50 joint venture, it means that China is financing 50% of the deal. So from a Kazakh point of view, it's an accelerator. If you wait to have the total budget, it's longer. If China says, okay, we co-finance, then you get more quickly the benefits of this connection. This is only one example of many cases of Kazakh-China oil and gas cooperation. This is because there are oil and gas pipelines. China networks are more developed along the coast. So the problem is always to go from Central Asia or Western China to the center. And ideally to reach the Pacific coast. The Chinese are financing a land port. So it's a logistic hub. And this one is at the frontier between China and Kazakhstan. Maybe some of you have visited this. It's impressive. To attract companies, China and Kazakhstan agreed to create a free trade zone. So if you invest in this place, you don't pay taxes for many years. And this path will serve as a connectivity link in terms of railways, truck, pipelines. I do not say that everybody is happy in Kazakhstan. Some Kazakh entrepreneurs are afraid. China is invading us. But again, when a partner is financing 50% of your infrastructure, you look at it in a positive manner. From Korgos, even the Kazakh government decided to cooperate with China in China. I need a Chinese interpreter to give the name of this port on the coast of China. The Chinese government and Kazakh government have just opened there a common hub so that Kazakh company can start exporting to Korea and Japan, because there is good connection from this port to all Chinese ports, but also Korea and Japan. So you see, without the Chinese initiative, nobody could dream of investing in a Chinese port jointly to start exporting products made in Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan certainly. Which means also that the railways from Astana or Almaty to China in the west, Urumqi, and there has also to be modernized and more rapid. Oh, I've lost everything. I was just entering Russia. So I should be modest. I've not interviewed these people managing these big investments. So you can correct me. But I selected 5 cooperation that are illustrating this Chinese strategy and the advantage that Russia can take out of it. Power of Siberia. We should ask Gazprom leaders, but it has been very difficult to negotiate the agreement. And the agreement has to do with this red line. Again, exporting natural gas to China this way, and also to Vladivostok. Enormous project. China needs the project because China needs energy. And the Gazprom is happy to sell the gas and to co-finance the project. Second Russian example, we move to the Arctic. A few months ago, this brand new ship, it's at the same time an icebreaker on a ship transporting liquid gas. It's a Russian ship. And what is the objective? The objective is to transport gas from the Yamal Peninsula along the Arctic to Tianjin, basically. So another way to transport gas. Who is financing this project? So number one partner is Russian conglomerate, Novatek. But you see three other forces there. A Western oil company, Total, French company, Chinese leader in the oil business, and China's Silk Road Fund. So a combination that will help the Russians to develop more quickly Yamal than if they were alone. We speak of transportation. 18 days to go from Norway to Vladivostok at the good season. But even in terms, the climate is changing, right? So along the pole. So yes, and from Russian point of view, the connection between the Arctic route and the center, including the Urals, is very important. And we'll see projects in these parts of Russia, in the north, that want to establish this connection alone or with Chinese or foreign support. In this chart, we see it's about length of transportation and volume that can transport from one part to another. All this is about trade. Huh? Arkhangelsk. I was suspecting that the authorities in Arkhangelsk, they want to develop their port also. And the port is too small for the big ships. So what are they doing to do? They want to create a new port, a few 50 kilometers away from the city of Arkhangelsk. And they want to build a new railway system. I think it's from Arkhangelsk to, I'm not sure, the direction of the Urals. Again, immense investment. Doing alone is difficult. Who is negotiating today with the authorities of Arkhangelsk and Moscow? Three Chinese groups, the shipping company, Cosmo, China Exim Bank, which is the state import-export bank, and another state-owned conglomerate of China. We'll see. Moscow-Kazan, which is the first step, because Moscow, Kazan, Ekaterinburg, Beijing. Takes time and money. Look at the budget. $17 billion. $17 billion US dollars. Now, Russian railways, are they going to leave the job entirely to Chinese railways? No. They have to fight, to negotiate. Not only the budget, but what material, what are the workers on the project, what is the technology and so on. But it's interesting because if they manage it, it will be an interesting operation from Moscow, from Kazan, and the rest of Russia. So the objective mentioned by the Ministry of Transport of Russia is 2022, operationality. The Moscow-Kazan is a new line, would be a new line. So it means that the Trans-Siberian can be flexible. A colleague from your school asked me to find an example in the Oblast of Tomsk. It was difficult for me. And I don't know where is Azinov, but you know where it is. Okay. Maybe it's far from Tomsk, no? I said that China needs resources. They need oil and gas, but they need also food resources on wood. Then comes the forest. And here we have also a partnership on something which is, if you look at the Russian version, there is one interpretation. English version of the Russian interpretation, another one, and Chinese version, very different. For the Chinese, it's like the Corbeau story. Free trade zone to develop the forest resources, so investing in the Tomsk Oblast, but also having the full benefit of the products. Is it pulp to make packages or paper? Is it wood to make construction? I don't know. And again, what is the problem? From Azinov to China, transportation. So you see the link between investment and transportation and connection, China, Russia, Europe, Russia. Again, big investments. Even if the train goes from Tomsk to Wuhan in China, 2 weeks, the Chinese call it the China Railway Express. Maybe the Russians call it Russian Railway Express, I'm not sure. Cooperation in transportation. The investor is a private company from the Hubei province. Oh, we are not far from my place. We are in Central Europe now. But first of all, we have to make a stop in Belarus. Then we'll go in Central Europe from the Baltic to the Black Sea. Then we'll look at a project between Belgrade and Budapest. And then we'll go to Greece. Great stone. If in Paris I ask investors to invest in Belarus, they say, no, why Belarus? Russia, certainly. Belarus is small, unknown. Where is it? I asked to Chinese authority why Minsk. Professor Larson, you don't know your geography. Minsk is in between Moscow and Berlin, so it's a good place for our project. So again, free trade zone. Minsk has excellent connection with Moscow and Berlin, but also to the coast. And if you can operate from Minsk, you can develop trade with Russia and Kazakhstan, European Union, Customs Union, but also with the West. I thought that the foreign trade of Belarus was, I don't know, 70% with Russia. It was my impression. I looked at the data of this year. Number one trade partner is Russia, but maybe 40%. Second partner, European Union. Third partner, China, going up in Belarus. I was in Lithuania with Chinese specialists of logistics a few months ago, And they wanted to check the connection between Minsk on the coast. There is a port called Klaipeda. So I understood it was the intermodal idea. The train should connect to the port. I was so interested, I asked the Chinese, can we continue the discussion when we go back to Minsk or to Vilnius? They said, no, we continue. I said, you continue where? You are Klaipeda. They said, we want to see the connection between Klaipeda, a port of Lithuania, to South Sweden. So I said, why South Sweden? They said, Professor, you don't know anything. South Sweden, we have 3 companies. Interesting. One company is Volvo, and as you know, Volvo Cars now is controlled by Chinese company Geely. And factories are there. South Sweden, northern China. Second company, IKEA. Furniture with wood from somewhere, but sold in China and designed in Sweden. So we like the connection. Third company, I don't know if you know the name in Russia, Tetra Pak, a Swedish company making packages for milk or orange juice. So I said, Tetra Pak, China, Silk Road. Oh, Chinese authorities said to Tetra Pak, you're a good company, we like you. You can continue to invest in China, but you should do more. So you're invited to build the largest packaging factory in the world in Inner Mongolia. I think the name is Hotot. So for IKEA, for Volvo, for Geely, for Tetra Pak, the connection, the train and ship connection is important. The Chinese invented the concept of 16+1 framework, 16 countries, Central Europe, plus 1, which is China. You have the list. The 3 Baltic Republic, and we go down to Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia. It's a, I do not say strange, but it's a specific choice. And I was curious because the largest country in the region is Poland, 40 million inhabitants, successful and so on. But the money, Chinese money, what we call FDI, foreign direct investments, okay? Where the money is going? If we look at these lines, what is the biggest line? It's not Poland, it's little Hungary. Hungary, maybe 10 million inhabitants or less. So why? One interpretation is the following. China proposed to the government of Serbia and Hungary to build the highway line, like the Moscow-Kazan. One of the goals of the Belt and Road concept of the Chinese is to export their rapid train technology. If you are the president of Hungary or Serbia, you're very happy. It is paid by China. And this is the plan. Because if you are successful in building this connection Budapest-Belgrade, then you can continue to Piraeus. And remember one of the map. Piraeus is the largest port investment of China, I would say in Europe, in the Mediterranean Sea. So you see, at the beginning, when I studied this topic of Belt and Road, I thought it was communist propaganda, just words. But we see that it's more serious than that. At least it's propaganda in action. This is Piraeus. And you see one of these big ships of the company COSCO. And as you know, Greece had financial difficulties. So Greek government was very happy to sell the port of Piraeus to COSCO. Not only because they had the money, but that COSCO was the best manager of port terminals in the region. So if you give the management of your port to COSCO, you are sure it will be managed in a very efficient manner. Maybe you wonder what are there in these containers, which products in the trains and in the containers in the ships. At least we know precisely for this port. Huawei and ZTE are the two largest telecom companies of China. Maybe you have a Samsung or a Huawei, no, Apple. Wow. I make my market research. So you made in China? Ah, yes, very chic. So, huge containers full of mobile phones. But surprise, it's not necessarily Chinese mobile phone. It's maybe Samsung mobile phone. One day I was interviewing Samsung in Bangalore, in India. So I said, why you are in Bangalore? Why? The guy said, oh, very simple. Research, new project in Seoul, in Korea. Software development in Bangalore, in India. Production in West China. So these ships or trains, same, are transporting not only, they are transporting goods made in China by Chinese companies and foreign companies. Luckily for me, I've been interviewed by French media because the first train of the Belt and Road reached the city of Lyon. So the journalist asked me, but what is in the train? And the answer was slightly different. In the train were car components, because in Lyon you have subcontractors of the largest car company, Peugeot. And they have a partner in China, in Wuhan, which is, forgot the name of this, one of the Chinese car industry giants. So again, this train, in that case, this boat serves to companies that are operating in the two regions, Europe and China. We need connectivity. Financing this project. These projects are mainly financed by Chinese-led institutions. One is called the Silk Road Fund. But there is a fund for everything. I think that the project of Asimov in the Oblast is financed by China, what's the name? China Bank for Import-Export. China Exim Bank. So the banker is a bank or a fund belonging to government, state-owned institutions. It's not enough, in a sense, to escape from American domination. China, with the support of India and Russia, has created a new Asian infrastructure investment bank. And today, I think that many countries in Asia and in Europe participate in this system. And the only people that are hesitating, I think, the US, maybe Japan. So it's true that this project, so big, so costly, have financial and political consequences. But remember this, it's kind of a competitor of the World Bank. So it's not little thing. For the colleagues and students in management here, managing this joint project is something unique. The actors are big companies or institutions. It can be a municipality, it can be the authority of a port, can be Russian railways, can be Russian bank, can be Kazakh government for transportation and so on. It covers many disciplines, shipping, maritime industry, to make these new icebreakers. I mean, it needs technology, advanced techniques. And also, these projects require a lot of information technology. These trains, these ships will be managed one day by robots, not by people. So among the key factors in terms of management, you have to do with the problem of how the capability to manage a big project, cross-cultural management ability. Moscow, Kazan, Chinese engineers, Russian engineers, who is the pilot, what is the compromise? And also a question mark, is it sustainable? Will they cooperate always? Gazprom agreement with China on the Power Siberia pipeline is a 20 years agreement. Will it be sustainable? I don't know. So many questions. Luckily for me, I found one of the best articles on the impact of Silk Road on Eurasia. You can find it in Moscow. There is a think tank called Valdai Club. I would say it's probably more a Russian point of view, but very smart. And this quote is one of their conclusions. So you see that the language eliminating spatial and interstate barriers to reach global market is not far from the Chinese original thinking. So I see a great convergence. And most especially we say that today, even for Belarus or Kazakhstan, it's already immense opportunity. I believe that for the Urals is the same. Because the opening gives you the possibility to work in many, many different countries. If you speak Chinese, you can buy my book. If you speak English and you are very rich, you can buy the English version. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Question. In English or in Russian? Or in French? Who is speaking French? Mr. Rector. How is it possible?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm a professor of Oriental Studies here. We have a department and have the Chinese studies here. So my question is, the main goal of China is the development of China. So Eurasia and Russia is on the territory. and China not going to develop us. So it's a very big question for us. So we have to find something interesting to China. And also we have some possibilities and doing some projects, mainly in public sphere, in some humanitarian spheres here. But well, I think it's a problem that China develop China, not us. And our government maybe not truly believe in it. Thank you.
At least I found five cases where Russian government is interested. But you're right, it is China vision and China interest. And it's pragmatic. And I see, it seems to me that Russia also is pragmatic in the relationship. I would like to pick an example that I know maybe better, the case of Poland. In Poland, the government is afraid that if the transportation is better, lower cost, or shorter time, in the end, it will increase the trade deficit between Poland and China. So the government say, oh, we don't like so much this initiative. I'm speaking of one of the 16 countries of Central Europe. But on the other hand, the port of Gdansk and the city of Łódź in Poland, which is well connected, would like to attract Chinese investment. So I think there is a compromise exactly between our interest in terms of trade and our interest in terms of investment. But my judgment, you know, it's an initiative that has been taken 4 years ago, so we cannot evaluate exactly. But I think even if you want to develop the interest of your own country and region, there is something to do with the Chinese because they have the ambition and they have the resource. So something is certainly possible. I would like to give you another example because you said public support. I was intrigued by this forest investment of the Chinese. And as you know, I work a lot in Nordic countries. So in Finland, they have giants in the forest business. And these giants work with the Chinese in Finland. They work also with the Chinese in Africa. So bringing technology and the Chinese bringing something else, develop the forest in Africa. And Finnish guys or other Scandinavian countries work with China in China. I was looking at all these birch trees you have in the oblast. This Finnish company specialized in forestry is planting trees in different countries abroad. So not using their trees, but planting trees in China, an immense eucalyptus forest. Eucalyptus. So again, you're right to be on the way. To be kind of passive, looking at the train crossing is not good. But the initiative can be in many ways, including cooperation with China, in China or abroad. And the oblast of Tomsk is not limited to natural resource. You have the talent, you have the technology, and then you're in a good position to negotiate with the Chinese, because the Chinese, in that case, they have the market. So if a small team, a startup in the region has invented something powerful, elegant in the IT sector, or whatever, application, whatever, then if you accept to discuss with the Chinese, they can open to you a market which is, I don't know, 10,000 times bigger than yours, even if you look at Russia entirely. So there is this momentum, so remember this also. My topic was more connected to logistics and so on, but cooperation in technology also is an opportunity for Russia. After all, you have two pillars here: natural resources plus people, talent, technology. But it's a dilemma. But to say no, we are not interested. By the way, another country of in Scandinavia, Norway. During 7 years or more, maybe 10, there was no diplomatic relationship between Norway and China because Norway gave the Nobel Prize to a Chinese dissident. Scandal, so we closed the embassy and so on. A few months ago, things are changing. And things are changing because they are powerful joint economic interests. The Norwegians, they want to export not their forest but their fish, salmon, and they cannot if Chinese government say no, Norwegian salmon, or condemn. So the Norwegians, they sell the salmon to Scotland and Scotland to China. But so economic interest plus economic interest along the pole, Arkhangelsk, Kirkenes. And you know, the municipality and the region of the north of Scandinavia, north of Finland, north of Norway, are very interested by Chinese capacity to co-invest with them to develop this part of the, also mining, energy, transportation along the pole. So yes, it is smart. You play with a serious partner, right? But not to play is ridiculous. It's an opportunity. They have the desire, they have the money, they are smart. So let's work with them. Madame?
Well, thank you for your lecture, but my question is the same. На русском. In Russian.
Just a second, to be sure to have the good... Please continue.
Можно, да? Вы показали здесь такую мощную долгосрочную стратегию Китая, которая стремится подчинить или использовать мировые ресурсы. А можете вы назвать какие-нибудь страны, которые тоже формируют такие вот мощные долгосрочные стратегии?
But tell me first, what's your professor? Which topic? Which topic? Economy. There is no equivalent of Chinese, what I call globalization Chinese with Chinese characteristics. It's my formulation. If I want to say my reality, I believe something similar happened in the past. Not so much British Empire, but maybe Roman Empire. A big piece of land. They had no pipeline for oil and gas, but for water, pavement, ports. No. But what is striking is that it's quite constant. We've seen 30 years of internationalization, one way or another. In the history of China, it's quite unusual, because China always sees itself as the center of the world. In the past, even at the time of the Chinese admiral exploring the sea, it was a period of 40 years in the long history of China. So I don't know if this, I looked at the result of the last summit in Beijing. Will the President Xi Jinping continue to push on the Silk Road? And the answer is interesting. They passed a law, not a law, but they asked an agency in China to pay attention to investment abroad that might not fit to Chinese policy and vision. Why are you buying hotels? Why are you buying companies selling games? Why? So we want to select, says the government. But we continue to encourage you to invest along the Silk Road, to invest if it helps exporting Chinese technology, such as the rapid train, if it helps to bring the natural resources we need, or metals. They lack also iron. So yes, I see for the moment continuity in the action of Xi Jinping with some criticism. For example, we have invested a lot in Central Europe. What is the return? And to give you an example of the return, I was in Budapest a few months ago. Everybody is very happy about the Chinese investments. But the European Union said have you followed the regulation of the EU in terms of tenders? You're in Europe, all companies should be able to apply, I want to build this train. It's a unity of, no, not really. So China will face resistance in different places. In that case, little resistance, legal resistance, but the Chinese are furious because they thought they could do it alone. And this idea also to work country by country, bilateral way, China, Budapest, China, Lithuania, it's easy, huh? it's 1 + 16, but it's 1 to 1. And we are a giant. So yeah, it's not, but I think it will continue, and it's very unique in the history of humanity. British Empire, Roman Empire. Yes, in English.
Thank you, Mr. Larsen, for a great presentation, for a great performance. I guess we, as a higher education institution, situated in the very middle of Eurasia, are eager to find out whether some educational projects can be integrated in the concept of the Great Silk Road, and can you imagine Tom's playing a role?
It's a delicate question for me, but you know, I'm a free man, so I try to answer. I believe that being in the middle today is an opportunity. This opportunity to work with China and to work with Europe. Professor mentioned when he was explaining to me the activities of the university, you have already a Confucius Center here, so people can learn the Chinese. Maybe we could have a Russian, there is a Russian center somewhere in China. So there are many complementarities. And I think that the Russians are a bit shy, as if it was complex. It's not, it's very close, it's very compatible. This is why I was speaking of a pragmatic cooperation. This should be easy in a region where you are rich of these two elements that the Chinese need, oil and gas, forest, maybe fish, I don't know, mushrooms, and the information technology. So, but this cooperation, maybe my recommendation, I should be a specialist of transition economies. I've been working in Russia, Central Europe, China for this transformation. Don't wait for the decision from Moscow or even from the authorities of the oblast. Entrepreneurs, Professor here, we have to build the link and find partners. And now the geography of it is not evident. Maybe from Shanghai, is it important? The University of Tomsk, not so much. They have other preoccupations. But maybe in Chengdu, maybe in Chongqing, maybe in Urumqi, maybe in Astana in Kazakhstan, maybe in Almaty, there is big potential of cooperation, of people of goodwill, high education. We speak of China, Russia, Kazakhstan. These countries have maintained over years, including the most, let's say, communist period, high standard in terms of research and education. This should be exploited by us, both ways. And then entrepreneurs will find the solution. When I see the inventions, we have visited this afternoon one of the labs of the chemistry department. When I see the capacity, the talent, the budget, the innovation, the research, the publication, it should not be limited to Russia, even if Russia is already a very big market. So, and you see the difference. The Chinese, in this vision, have always been very international. Russia has always been more shy about internationalization. When a colleague of mine, the name is Pani Bratov, he has written a book on Russian multinational. I was writing a book on Chinese multinational, we compared the job. Russian multinationals have, first of all, have little support from government. They have not the mandate to conquer Brazil or Indonesia, right? So they do what they want at the level of strategy. So not enough Russian companies are looking at the possibility to invest abroad, to develop joint venture abroad. Again, China, for me, seen from France, is a market. So if they want to enter my country, it's okay, fine. By the way, if we have car components in the trains coming from Wuhan to the city of Lyon, the trains come back with Beaujolais wine on the other direction. So we have also something to export in Lyon. So yes, no, big potential, but it cannot be decided by government. It's too complex. I think initiative at the university and company level is the best. But this situation of developing connectivity, I think, is difficult to criticize. If suddenly, when we created the first rapid train between Paris and Lyon, distance is 400 kilometers. People were afraid that the companies that had their headquarters in Lyon would go to Paris. The contrary happened. But in the middle, so if you have nothing to export, nothing to create value, you're eliminated. But at least you're on the map. The guys that want to use the port in China to export to Japan and to Korea are agriculture products. Beans from Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan, I forgot. So for these companies, they have no market in the past. Suddenly, they have an access to an immense market. So if they have the product, if they have the capacity to upgrade it, to manage it, to market it, to create value, then it's totally new life. This is why my objective was to try to concrete example to show that potentially, if it lasts, this strategy of China, it's an opportunity to transform the geography of the region, and for the countries that are in the middle, it's an opportunity to open. And we should run, the Chinese are running fast. We should stop at one moment. It's not for me, but I don't want to abuse of your time.
Merci beaucoup pour
Formidable.
C'était magnifique. Et je veux vous ne dire rien sur l'écologie de ce problème. Je pense qu'il y a de pollution parce que je suis biologiste. Je pense qu'il y a beaucoup d'argent.
You should shift to Russian and English because I'm the only one to understand the question. Do it again in English, please. Your question.
I think
You're worried about the ecology.
Можно я скажу по-русски и мне переведут? Я считаю, что вот эти все проекты это очень здорово, но урон окружающей среде доставляется достаточно значительный. И если от этого всего очень большая прибыль, то почему бы не брать часть этой прибыли и не переводить ее в восстановление природы?
It's a very good question, and I think it's possible. I will send you, I've written an article that will be published in Finland, the University of Turku. In Scandinavia, you know, they say don't touch our environment, don't spoil our forest, don't destroy our Baltic Sea. So a lot, it depends on the country, but a lot of attention can be given to the environmental dimension. And this can be imposed. To give you an example, I mentioned this port in Africa, in Kenya, and the railways crossing Africa. You cross wild territories that have to be protected. But this, for such infrastructure projects, you are under the authority of the local government. So in fact, it's not private action in a kind of wild manner. More than that, if for the Moscow Kazan, imagine a big high-speed railway, you cross territories, maybe, and so on. I plead that the interest of China Railways Company and Russian Railways is the same, to have super quality of service to the clients, but also no criticism from the point of view of environment, and no criticism from the social point of view. That is, does it create job for us? And so the three elements go together. Sustainability. Your project, Mr. President of China, is okay for the city of Gdansk in Poland if the new port or the extension of the port of Arkhangelsk, if it gives job to my people in Arkhangelsk, if it helps me export to China, and not only one way, and if we protect the White Sea quality of water. And this is feasible because now it's well regulated, but why this company should be reasonable in that case is because it's their interest. Remember China, we want to export Chinese technology. If they export Chinese technology and if it is an ecological disaster, they are condemned. Nobody will buy Chinese technology. They want to have the rapid train between San Francisco and Los Angeles. So the project they conduct either in Central Europe or in Russia or in Kazakhstan or even in China should be sustainable from an ecological point of view. Ecologic transition is difficult for China because for the moment they have a lot of energy with coal power, which is polluting. So to move from coal to oil or nuclear or wind or everything is difficult, but they want to do it. We have this agreement on climate signed in Paris. President Trump said we don't want to participate. China said we continue. We want to continue to try to reduce pollution, so to eliminate step by step our polluting sources of energy such as coal. So normally, the forces around the companies will help to make it sustainable. By the way, in the Chinese case, 95% of these companies are state-owned giants. So they have to follow the rule. They are not wild small companies. So there are some private companies, but in this industry, shipping, port, energy, telecom, it's more state-owned. But what you said is a priority for the planet, for ourselves, for our cities and so on, but it can be, I should not say imposed, but it's part of the business project. You teach business project, okay? What is the sustainability? And